The definitions that Holmes talked about really presented some difficulty, and they were to some extent all over the map. It was really hard to see how they defined sexual harassment or to get a clear grasp of it. So Holmes sets out to give a slightly better, I think he wants to give a lot better, but it's a very difficult concept to talk about, definition of harassment. And in particular, he defines sexual harassment in this way. He says sexual harassment is repeated, unwanted sexual attention. Okay, now you might wonder what's sexual attention? If you whistle at somebody on the street, if there's a cat call on the street, is that sexual attention? If you're thinking about the person, if you're looking at the person and you have a smile on your face, is that sexual attention? I mean, clearly, if you go over and kiss somebody, well, I guess it depends on the context. If it's not a relative of yours or somebody you don't know, or it's not a country where they kiss everybody when they meet people, maybe that's unwanted sexual attention. And you might wonder. Notice we don't have a definition of harassment, but if we look at the Oxford English Dictionary, which is kind of the dictionary of the English language, it defines harassment as to trouble or vex. I guess let's think of trouble because most people haven't heard the word vex. Uh, by repeated attacks. So we see that there has to be an element of something being repeated. So it's a redundancy, maybe, that is all harassment, according to this definition, has to be repeated. One time, it is not harassment. Maybe that's a problem with the Oxford English Dictionary's characteristic of sexual harassment. Now, it's pretty broad and it's not pretty specific because you got to figure out certain other things. And let's look at some of maybe what he has in mind about the wrong-making characteristics of this repeated or persistent unwanted behavior. And he says, look, it can be directed against a person or groups of persons because of race, ethnicity, religion, sex, physical appearance. I think that's just harassment in general can be done in that way. Of course, I don't think sexual harassment is you're doing it against groups of people because of their race. I think it's because of their sex, and in particular because a certain, something about their sex attracts you, I would imagine. It says it can be practiced by police, governments, and nations in a wide variety of areas. For example, warfare. I mean, there's a claim, it happens oftentimes in war that there are atrocities and people sexually harass people in the country in which warfare is going on. But finally, he explains to us in terms of the moral assessment of sexual harassment, Holmes says sexual harassment is prima facie wrong. And there's a lot to be said about what this prima facie wrong is, and it's an important concept. It's an important moral concept that we're going to spend more time on. But first, we're going to turn our attention a little bit to really what are the elements, what are the wrong-making elements of sexual harassment, and what does it mean?